Another question here about marketing, because you've got a book trailer for The Curse of the Werepenguin. It's a little bit fun and horrifying, in quotes, because you've got kids that are they're terrified that something's coming. And of course, it's a penguin. Um, who does the book trailer, and how is that useful to you in the grand marketing strategy for your book?
So I had as much to do with that book trailer as I did finding those blurbs for my cover of my book. So unfortunately was very little. They sent me a storyboard with the idea. Being in advertising, I'm very familiar with storyboards and videos because that's part of what I do for a living. So I was very interested in what they were doing. Unfortunately, I really liked it. So there wasn't a whole lot of input that I gave to it other than, wow, this is really good. I actually had my own idea for a trailer I was going to maybe film myself, but theirs was better. So mine, or at least theirs was more professionally crafted. So there was no reason for me to go out on a limb and try to create my own. And your second part of your question, which is how these are used, and I wish I knew exactly. I see these, I think, well, this is really great. How can I use it? Certainly, I can link to it on my website, and I can link to it on social media. You'll have to ask someone closer to the actual creation of, at least of book trailers that are developed and created by publishers to quite know the range and of how they are used and how impactful they are or are not impactful on book sales. But I think the trailer is awesome. So if you haven't seen it, you go to YouTube. The Curse of the Werepenguin trailer. You'll see it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I'll put a link in the show notes. So check that out. It's all of a minute long, maybe less.
Yeah, somewhere between a minute, maybe a minute and a half. I think less than a minute. I know when I create things, under a minute is sort of the key. People's attention tend to leave a little bit after that, which is why television commercials are 30 seconds long, sometimes 60, but very seldom longer than that. 60 seconds is about the limit of most people's attention spans, especially when seeing videos online. And even that, if you watch a TikTok video, for example, this is a fraction of that amount of time.
That is something for any advertising people that should happen to be watching or listening. Something I've enjoyed recently is there are commercials that get to their point within 5 seconds, and then we'll do something fun for the remainder of the commercial and generally acknowledge that you now have the ability to skip it. Like, hey, thanks for the 5 seconds. Now here's somebody juggling, here's something entertaining if you want to continue. Otherwise, go on about your business, enjoy the video.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but when a video comes on and says skip ad as an option, the vast majority of people press skip ad. I don't have again statistics to give the exact numbers, but the goal is to make that first 5 seconds either tell your story or make it so compelling that you don't press skip ad. But even the most compelling video is going to be very difficult to get people's fingers off that skip ad button when people have other things they want to do with their lives. They have things they want to get to.
Where they do get me is if they've got, a 3 or 5 minute commercial, something ridiculous like that, and I'm listening to a podcast, so I'm away from my computer, and they come in the middle of the podcast, and I've got my hands literally in soapy water doing dishes, or I'm busy doing something else. And I think, well, 30 seconds, this will be over, and it keeps going. I'm like, a minute, this needs to be over soon. 2 minutes, I'm going to have to dry my hands and actually physically walk to the computer. So well played, advertisers. You probably get skipped by lots of people, but you catch me, I'm at your mercy.
I have no patience for any of that. So anything that's longer than 30, 60 seconds, I'm not watching it unless it's something that's vital. Instructional video on how to, do something amazingly awesome that's going to change my life, but very, very seldom does it happen.
I'm not watching it so much; it's just being held hostage because I can't go on listening to the enjoyable thing that I was listening to. Well, let me ask you this: a question I'm always striving to get an answer to, and I know that the standard line is the thing about advertising is only 50% of it works, but nobody knows which 50%, or some phrase along those lines. But do you have some idea of what has been the most effective marketing strategy for your books thus far?
I do not have a great answer, but whatever they did for Harry Potter, I'd say that. But I don't have any great insight into that.
Sure, just get a theme park designed after the Werepenguin, and you'll be in good shape.
As an author, I can, going on school visits is a great way to get the word out. You're talking to, a few hundred kids at one time. You're not talking to tens of thousands of kids at one time, but going on school visits, attending conferences where there may be large groups of other authors and our audience at our, as an author, are great mechanisms to use to get a following and get the word out. But in terms of mass media advertising, I am relying to a great extent on my publisher for that.
And how often do you attend conferences?
2 or 3 a year, I would say. Kind of depends. Usually around a book launch, and maybe a few more. But I do a lot of visits. I try to do school visits throughout the school year, obviously, not in the summer. But those could be, those are a few times a month usually. So it's a great way to not only promote yourself, but to be around kids. My kids now grown up. They were, my age, the perfect book writing age when I first started out, but that was 10 years ago. So they're 10 years older. They have graduated from the types of books that I am writing. And it would just be weird to hang out at elementary schools by myself. So the fact that people invite me to go to them, to actually talk to kids and to meet them and to see them and to hear what they have to say about my book and other things is a great resource to have. So not only do I enjoy the school visits from a marketing standpoint, but from a writing standpoint, an educational standpoint, I have to write books that reach that audience. Otherwise, it's hard to reach that audience in any way versus 10 years ago when my kids had their friends over all the time. So it was much easier at that time to kind of put your head into the head of kids and remember what it was like when you were a kid yourself.
So when you're at a school visit, what kind of market research are you doing? Do you have some standard questions that you'll ask the kids about what they're reading, or?
No, not standard. I mean, it'll be a conversation. What books? What's your favorite books? Oh, great! I read that too. What do you like about it? Why don't you like this book? I mean, I might ask a little bit, but usually they're conversations. So the conversation may steer in other directions. I'm not necessarily setting out to gather market research. Just that relates to them as a person and try to hear how they say things and hear where they're coming from and remember what it was like to be that age myself, which can then help me be a better writer when I'm writing about protagonists that share those same qualities.
So you're not showing up with a clipboard and a pen and sit down in a focus group situation?
I maybe should. It's actually probably a pretty good idea, but I haven't thought of it yet. Maybe if I do, I'll make sure I mention you.
Oh, great.
Excuse me, Rob Kent told me I need to use a clipboard. I'm sorry that I'm asking all these questions, but talk to Rob Kent. He's the one that told me to ask these questions. I'm just doing what he told me to do. Now stop goofing off and answer these questions.
Question number 1: what's your favorite Rob Kent novel? Go on. What is the tip for a successful school visit? How do you know if one's gone well?
Anytime you're a public speaker, I think you can read your audience. If they're talking amongst themselves and rolling their eyes and bored, kids can get bored pretty quickly. You can tell if they've lost their interest. Maybe respectful and not speaking and not heckling you, but they're shuffling. My presentations have a lot of give and take, audience response. I'm asking them questions to keep them involved. And so if you ask a question and the room is, you hear a pin drop, you've lost them. If everyone's raising their hand because they're all eager to participate and ask their questions and are, at the edge of their lotus position seats to hear your next word, then obviously you are resonating with them. So I make a lot of effort to make my presentations funny and engaging and not just me speaking, but having them participate in some ways to keep their interest. But I think you can tell pretty easily in any audience whether you have your audience's attention or if you've lost them.
Yeah, except when it's a podcast and you can't see or hear the audience, then you just have to hope for the best.
I guess so.
Assume that they're in their car. Maybe they're stuck with the dishes and they want to turn it off, but they can't get their hands dried. Oh, I've been there, friend. Well, what's a good length for a school visit or a presentation?
So my presentations tend to be between 45 and 50 minutes long. They could be an hour. Younger kids can't sit still that long, so maybe if I'm doing a kindergarten or first grade, I might limit it to a half hour. That includes question and answer. So if I'm doing 45 minutes, it might be 35 minutes for presentation and 10 minutes for questions and answer. Sometimes it might take longer. Again, it's some participation. So if people are really raising their hand, we could run out of time. It doesn't happen a lot of time. I'm usually pretty clock savvy, so I know when I can stop asking questions and just skip ahead, sort of thing. But I would say I usually allow 45 to 50 minutes for my typical school presentation, and then I might give three, during the school day, one for, one grade, one for next grade, one. Usually they're auditorium filled presentations, so I might do entire grade, and an entire grade or two, then an entire grade or two, depending on the size of the school.
Gotcha. So you could be there all day doing 4 or 5 presentations by the time you're done?
I try not to do 4 or 5. I try to limit it to 3. Officially, I might make exceptions. It's sort of draining. I'm not a natural. I enjoy writing. When you're writing, you're by yourself in a room. There's no one around you. You don't talk a lot. So that's kind of my default. So actually being on display in front of people and entertaining them and being verbose is not necessarily my default. So it takes a lot of energy for me to do them. And so 3 is where I limit if I can. I would not do 5 unless there was some major reason why I needed to, but I don't know what that would be.
To sell more books.
Well, I've done like an evening presentation in addition to a school day. So if you add in the evening presentation, at like a family night kind of event, then there'd be more than 3 presentations if you included that.
And I assume when you come out, you don't say, "Hi, I'm Allan Woodrow. This is my book, Curse of the Werepenguin, Chapter 1," and just start reading. What are you coming out and are you talking specifically about your books, or what does your presentation typically entail?
I have more than one presentation that I do, but generally speaking, it's about my life and my writing and how I've become a better writer. Hopefully they're funny, but I use my own examples. I mentioned earlier in this conversation how I wanted to be a writer when I was in 3rd grade. So I share, one of my first book I ever wrote in 3rd grade, which obviously is horrible, and talk about how, despite it being horrible and despite my fear of failure, which I already touched on here, was keeping me from pursuing this passion of mine. But I was able to work past it, and how important it is for anyone, even if you're in elementary school, whether you're scared of trying out for a school band or trying out for a sport team or trying to make a new friend because you're convinced that person will never want to be your friend or never want to make that team or be good enough for anything. You can be like me and listen to that voice and put your dreams or what you want to do aside, or you can ignore that voice. And look, it worked for me, right? I ignored that voice. Now I've written lots and lots of books. But if I continue to listen to the voice, I never would have succeeded. So hopefully that lesson can, in a perhaps a smaller, in a more narrowly focused way, can also help and encourage kids to find their own dreams and pursue their own loves as well.